1964, on the muddy foreshore of the River Thames near Hammersmith Bridge in West London, a body was found. A woman, stripped almost bare, left at the edge of the water. Her name was Hannah Tailford. She was 30 years old, and at first, no one realized that she was only the beginning. Over the next 12 months, 5 more women would be found in the same way, in the same corner of London, all of them stripped, all of them left near the river or dumped on quiet ground in the dark. The newspapers, reaching back 75 years to another killer who had stalked another part of the same city, gave this one a name that stuck. They called him Jack the Stripper. And to this day, more than 60 years later, no one knows who he was. The women who died were, for the most part, sex workers, walking the streets of West London to get by. And that, at the time, was part of the problem. Because in 1964, women like them were not thought of as victims worth the effort. When Hannah Tailford was pulled from the Thames, the first response wasn't even certainty that she'd been murdered. It took more bodies before the people in charge truly accepted what was happening on their doorstep. Irene Lockwood was next. 26 years old, found on the shore of the Thames that April, not far from where Hannah had been. Then, weeks later, Helen Barthélemy, just 22, originally from Blackpool, found in an alleyway in Brentford. Then Mary Fleming, then Frances Brown, and finally Bridget O'Hara, known to her friends as Bridie, a young woman who had come over from Dublin hoping for a better life and hadn't found one. 6 women, 6 lives, and behind the grim newspaper nickname, that is what this case really is. Not a monster story. 6 real people, most of them poor, most of them alone, who were failed in life and then hunted in the dark. As the bodies mounted, the police began to see a pattern, and it was a strange one. The women had been strangled or suffocated, yet there were almost never signs of a struggle. They had been stripped, in some cases down to nothing but their stockings. In several cases, teeth were missing, and there was no evidence of the kind of assault the investigators expected to find. Whoever this was, he wasn't leaving his victims where they died. He was taking them somewhere first, keeping them, and then moving them again, laying them out around West London almost like a signature, which raised the question that would come to define the entire investigation. Where was he keeping them? The answer came from the body of Helen Barthélemy, and it was almost invisible. On her skin, forensic examiners found tiny flecks of paint. Not household paint, but the fine spray paint used in the motor trade, the kind used for spraying car panels. It was the first solid physical clue in the whole case, in an age long before DNA, and it told the police something vital. Their killer had access to a place where cars were sprayed, a garage, a workshop, a paint shop. There was more. When the last victim, Bridie O'Hara, was found, her body showed signs that it had been kept somewhere warm and dry for weeks, long enough to begin to mummify. The killer had a hiding place, indoors, heated, private, somewhere he could store a body and not be disturbed. The paint flecks led the police in the end to an industrial estate in Acton in West London, the Heron Trading Estate, and there, in a covered spot near a large electrical transformer, warm and sheltered and out of sight, they believed they had finally found it. The place where the women had been kept, the killer's own hidden corner of the city. By now, the hunt for Jack the Stripper had become the largest murder investigation in the history of the Metropolitan Police. It was led by a senior detective named John Rose, a man the papers had nicknamed 4-Day Johnny for his reputation of cracking cases fast. This one would not be fast. Rose threw everything at it. Over the course of the investigation, something like 7,000 suspects were questioned. Officers watched the estate through the night. They chased down a report of a gray van seen near where one of the women had been left. They worked through list after list of men and came up with nothing that would hold. And then Rose did something unusual. He went to the newspapers and he began, very publicly, to announce that he was closing in. His list of suspects, he said, had been narrowed to 20, then to 10, then to just 3. It may have been true. It may also have been a deliberate bluff, a way of piling pressure on a killer he couldn't quite reach, of making the man believe the net was tightening around him. If it was a bluff, it seems to have worked, because after Bridie O'Hara in early 1965, the murders simply stopped. Jack the Stripper never killed again. And that, in its own way, is one of the most unsettling parts of the whole story. Because a killer who suddenly stops usually stops for a reason. He is caught for something else. He moves away, or he dies. Rose came to believe he knew who it was. In the years that followed, he pointed to a man who had worked as a security guard on that very estate in Acton, a Scotsman who had taken his own life in the early months of 1965 at almost exactly the moment the killings ended. In the note he left behind were the words, "I can't stick it any longer." Rose was convinced this was his man, but he could never prove it. The timing was suggestive, and nothing more. And to this day, plenty of people believe the detective simply settled on a convenient answer to close an unbearable case. Other names have been raised over the decades. A famous former boxing champion, Freddie Mills, who was himself found shot dead in 1965, was whispered about in the papers, though on little more than rumor. The case has been tangled up with the gangsters and the scandals of 1960s London. And much more recently, in our own century, a criminologist put forward a different name entirely. A convicted double child killer from Wales named Harold Jones, who had been released and was living quietly in West London during the exact years of the murders, and who, it emerged, had once worked with industrial paint. It is a compelling theory, but it, too, remains only that, a theory. The truth is that we do not know, and in all likelihood now we never will. Much of the forensic evidence that might have cracked it with modern methods was lost or destroyed long ago. The men who ran the investigation are gone, and Jack the Stripper, whoever he was, took his name with him. What remains are the 6 women: Hannah, Irene, Helen, Mary, Frances, and Bridie. For a long time they were remembered, if they were remembered at all, only as a lurid headline, the nude victims of a faceless man. But they were people first. They had families and names and lives that mattered, whatever the world of 1964 chose to think. Somewhere in the West London of 60 years ago, a man walked those streets and did these things and was never caught and died with his secret. And the only thing left that we can still do for the women he left by the river is to remember that they were far more than the way they died.